Welcome to the Earth Cave. Here we are. This looks a lot like the first floor of the Earth Cave from the vanilla version, although I can already tell that the floor tiles have been changed around just a little bit. Also, the abilities of the bull-type enemies, the minotaur-type enemies, have been changed. They've been given a status attack, which is a very easy way to make enemy a lot more threatening in a Final Fantasy I hack. Especially if you can put multiples on there, like poison and sleep, which we will see, I'm sure. Although stun is certainly nothing to sneeze at. The first floor of the Earth Cave generally has a couple of treasure rooms from this central spiral here, or this central point. Generally, the chests are guarded by an Earth Elemental in the vanilla version, so I'm taking lessons learned from playing a lot of the vanilla version and applying them here. I know that's technically probably considered metagaming, although I can't imagine any ROM hack author who works lovingly in a project like this would begrudge anybody for metagaming based on the vanilla version. After all, the reason we create, not we, I shouldn't say, because I'm not actually a ROM hack creator, I'm a ROM hack enjoyer. The reason ROM hackers create them is out of love for the original game. Now, this is interesting because we do run into an Earth enemy, and I get a chance to strike first, so that tells me a couple things. One, if I wanted to escape from this battle, I could do it automatically on the first round. I am going to burn through some spells and fight through because I'm going to leave and restock in nearby Melmond after clearing this first floor of the dungeon. But that tells me that at least this type of battle, the one Earth formation, which I believe in the vanilla version is 1 to 2 Earths, that's escapable in this hack. I cannot remember if they are escapable in the vanilla version or not. The 1 to 2 Earth fight. I can't remember if they're escapable. I know some of the later elemental enemies are not, like the airs and waters. I think are randomly inescapable, but Earths and fires maybe. So not particularly remarkable on the treasure there. I am not fully stocked up on everything because the way the gold curve goes in this game, it's going to be tricky to run into every single town and buy all the spells and all the equipment that you need. Looks like I found the steps going down to the next level of the dungeon. I'm going to get out of this green ogre battle because these green ogres actually are surprisingly pesky. They have what seems to be maybe around 500 hit points. I'm going just by guessing after fighting a good number of them. But it looks like it's roughly 500. And they can hit surprisingly hard. So I haven't upgraded much. I have upgraded to a new weapon for the Viking. I did pick up the steel axe for the Viking, which cost most of the money that I had, but that's kind of my best source of reusable free, quote-unquote, free damage. So I picked that up. Now this is going over to what I would call the Hall of Giants neighborhood. And this is where the first floor has been altered. Because normally the Hall of Giants would be right around in this neighborhood where I'm walking through now, but this is not the Hall of Giants. So if there is a Hall of Giants somewhere, it's not right here, because the Hall of Giants in the vanilla version Earth Cave is every single square is spiked with a giant type battle, and I can't remember if it's 1 to 2 or if it's 2 to 4 giants. There might be a difference. Some might be one, some might be the other. So I've cycled back to the entrance staircase, and I'm going to try to stay away from these battles that can drain your resources with poison. They can drain my spell charges, although I do have 2 characters who can cast the Purge spell. So it's not like I'm going to be mowing through potions or anything, but potions are so much more expensive in this game, although the Purge or Cleanse potions are less than the healing potions. But I don't really have many of them because I have 2 casters who can cast the Purge spell, which will get rid of that poison for us. So these cobras are putting us to sleep. I haven't seen poison pop up yet, so thankfully at least sleep functions more or less like stun. I think there's a difference in how it applies some things or its percent to hit. I'm not totally sure on that, but at least it doesn't stay with you. Now here we have a couple of the cobras running away. We saw the one run away, and now that I've went several unsuccessful rounds trying to flee from this battle, I'll just go ahead and fight this battle with the 2 cobras left because it's going to be faster for me to just fight the snakes away. But I've seen this already a little bit, so the author of this patch seems to, and this is a guess from me, seems to have adjusted the morale of some of these quote-unquote early game enemies. I did pick up a couple of levels while I was getting ready for the Earth Cave. I just went out and got some extra money to buy some things, and I picked up a couple levels in the process. So the morale check doesn't often pop up in the vanilla version of FF1. It relies on a random number plus or minus a morale value for the enemy. Every enemy has a morale score. So you have a random number and a morale check, and then your party's level, I think it's your party's leader level maybe, is the number that it checks against. So if you have a high enough level, enemies that have low morale will start to run away from you, as these cobras have. And that actually is checked at the beginning of every single enemy action. The way the game works, the very first thing every single enemy in this game does is it makes a check to see if it should run away from you, and that includes all 4 fiends and chaos. So one of the things you can kind of famously do in the vanilla version is make chaos run away from you, but you have to land fear on him a couple of times at a 1/2, just slightly less than 1/2 of 1% chance to land fear. You have a 1 in 201 chance of landing fear on chaos in the vanilla version. So if you see a tool-assisted speedrun with the white mage, you can see the white mage lands fear on chaos. I think it's 4 times to lower his morale enough that he will flee from one single white mage. Now, of course, in Final Fantasy Restored, you can land a little bit more on chaos thanks to Xfer, which removes resistances to things. But so fear can land a little bit more often because fear, I think, is a status element attack. It's a status element status because the statuses and elements are mixed in. So the status is an element in this game for all intents and purposes. So I think fear is a status element attack that you can land fear on. Anyway, enough about the algorithms of the vanilla version. We are playing Final Fantasy Ultra Champion Edition, and I'm going after the Earths with fire. As I remember, they did not resist fire as much. I might be remembering that incorrectly, and it seems like they're not really resisting fire, but they're definitely not. It's not dealing the kind of damage that it would if they were weak to fire. But I believe they resist lightning, and I'm not sure how they do against ice. But I have more firepower in the fire element than I do in the ice element because I have both Fire 2 single targeting and Fire 1, both single targeting, I should say. And this battle, I believe, is the same battle formation of 1 to 2 Earths from the vanilla version, so it probably is also escapable. There's a cleanse potion and a steel shirt. I think it's shirt or scale armor maybe is what you would call that. So that is a step up for my Viking. So we'll take a look and see what it does to our stats. So we'll put the iron shirt back on him. 15 and 53 for absorb and evade. And the steel is 20 and 53. So we got 5 extra absorb. So that's for every single hit we take, we're taking 5 fewer damage. Plus, we did not get a penalty for our evade percent. When you wear heavier armor, you generally, the equipment weight gives you a lower evasion. But for this one, it's not necessarily heavier than the iron was. Or at least it's not heavier enough to have us lose some of that evasion. So it is a strictly 100% better piece of equipment. And that's one of the reasons that I have not spent a lot of money on armor and weapon upgrades, because you can generally, and again, I'm metagaming a little bit, but you can, in most RPGs, you can generally count on the dungeons to give you some of your equipment that is at roughly the level it should be. And in a game like this where money is at such a premium, it's going to be tempting for me to not make the upgrade in the town and wait until the next dungeon to see if I can get some of that upgraded equipment in the dungeon for free, rather than spending all of my hard-earned money on it. Spells, of course, you cannot find in a dungeon, so gotta buy the spells. Luckily and thankfully, it seems like spells are cheaper in this hack than they are in cheaper, not than the vanilla version, but cheaper than equipment. So picking up a level 4 or 5 white or black spell might run cheaper or roughly the same as getting a new weapon. So you can get those spells, and hopefully you can pick up some nice weapons and armor in the dungeons. Now this is a tough battle. The bull has the status attack stun, and the asps have the status attack poison. Now the asps are running away like crazy because they are an enemy from back around Elfland, so they were an enemy from several levels ago. Although I'm guessing, just by observation, I'm guessing that the morale values in this game have been changed. Either how it's calculated, or maybe each enemy has an individually lower morale score, because I don't think asps in the vanilla version are running away from you when you're at level 10 and 11. I don't think their morale is quite that low. So that makes a nice little change, that some of the smaller, piddlier enemies will start to run away from you as the game goes on. Generally, the only time you will see enemies really running away from you often is in the vanilla version, just before you get the airship, when you still have to take the regular old ship around the world map, and your characters are nearing level 20. Sometimes you'll start to see the sea hag type enemies start to run away from you. That's generally when you see it. Or if you're running around Coneria and you run into an imp, groups of imps. So I'm going to head back to Melmond to restock, to save up after clearing out that first floor and exploring that first floor. We'll restock, and I'll pick up a spell. I'll spend some of the hard-earned scratch that I picked up down there in the dungeon on one of the level 5 spells. So here's Melmond. You can look up the newly slightly changed up formation. We've got our white and black magic shop, the inn just near the western entrance, just as it is in the vanilla version. So there's a look at that. Soft, I discovered from a townsperson, also casts stone on an enemy. So fire 3, bolt 3, stop, and warp. Warp, I believe, functions to take you out of floor of the dungeon, but there is a townsperson here who will help us out with that. You may also be able to use warp to escape a battle, I believe he says. So there's how much the steel axe cost, 8,000 to buy that new steel axe. Here's a look at the armor shop. And that steel shield, I believe, was a treasure chest find. But we have the steel set of equipment. So equipment so far has been very simple. You just have one step up for all 3 weapon types, and then one step up for all of the armor types, from the basic to the next, to the next, to the next. And currently we're on the steel level, apparently. So let's say hi to some of the folks. Okay, warp, foes flee in battle. Stop, paralyzes. Fire 3 and bolt 3 do what they do. Soft also petrifies his foes. Petrifies foes. So the top 2 are direct. So we learn about the direct and indirect spells. So that's something that's in the README. The white and black spells are categorized into direct and indirect, and that is how. There's Dr. Un by by the way. And that's how they're assigned to each of the classes, is direct and indirect. So Dr. Un is translating the language of Lefian. We saw the witch there came from Crescent Lake. They were scared of the volcano erupting, and so she fled Crescent Lake to Melmond, which is also not doing so hot these days, which is kind of funny. So deciding what to pick up for 7,500. I'm just seeing what T-Hawk can learn. And it looks like T-Hawk can learn everything except Holy 3. Now, the Paladin will be able to learn Holy 3 when I have that kind of money. And I went with Cure 3 because it's a spell that I can use, and I can use it now. I have one charge of level 5 magic from the cleric down there. I would like to pick up Shell, which will protect us against elemental attacks. I'm not sure that according to the townsperson, defends against elements. I don't know if that means it defends against all 8 elements, like Wall does, or if by elements that townsperson means fire, ice, and lightning. Now, I'm not sure if that's something I'm supposed to discover on my own as a player. That's totally fine if that's the case, of course. But when it says defends against elements, according to the townsperson, my guess, and given that it's only a level 5 spell, my guess is that it defends against fire, ice, lightning, maybe earth. Maybe earth. Earth is kind of an obscure element in this game. Most of the earth attacks are actually instant death attacks. So it's handy if you can get protection against earth, but there are not very many skills or spells in this game of the earth element. It's not quite as obscure as the time element. I believe there's only 1 or 2 time elemental abilities and spells in the vanilla version. Maybe that's changed here. I believe in the Final Fantasy ZZ hack, there's a little bit more time elemental stuff. I think you have a time elemental offensive attack called Dart. I think it's just a single targeting big damage spell called Dart that is of the time element. And I think that's just meant to get around enemy resistances, because a lot of early game enemies have resistances to the traditional elements. So while we're in the dungeon here, I'm going to be trying to run from a lot of battles, because this party cannot win battles quickly. It does best when it can kind of sandbag itself up defensively. But because of my more magic-heavy approach, I'm relying on spell charges to do most of my offense and defense, actually. So I cannot really afford to allow random battles to wear down my resources too much. And what's going to kind of push me a little bit and challenge me is going to be those. There's the steel axe, so I did buy a steel axe for 8,000, and unfortunately now I am got another one for free. So all right, here is the another group of green ogres, and I did see the stairs going down to the next level. I believe I found them after picking up that steel axe duplicate, but I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because if I remember from the vanilla version of this game, there is another treasure room down here, and I'm going to try to pick that up because the treasures are super duper valuable in this game. The little bit of extra money that they'll provide, and the especially the equipment upgrades that could be sitting in them are going to be more than worth chasing down. And so if there is indeed another one here, a bat caused me to get into an extra random battle, which is really the bat's role in this game, is to kind of force you to take more steps than you would have liked to, and force you into more random battles than you normally would have gotten into. This is a tricky battle here because both ghouls and geists have opportunity for multiple hits. The ghouls can survive a casting of Holy. If Holy rolls high, it can take out the ghouls in one shot. But the geists will definitely survive a couple of plinks, and they are pretty likely to start paralyzing you right away. You can see I have 3 characters paralyzed in that first round. Esper, who can cast Holy and Holy 2, did not get the attack off, unfortunately. Zonk did get Holy off, but it only took out 1 ghoul, and everyone else was paralyzed. Now, with Esper sitting up there in the front position, fully 50% of enemy incoming attacks are going to target Esper, so it's very, very, very likely that the Paladin will be paralyzed. The question really is just, will the Paladin get their spell off before Paralyze lands and sticks? In the case of that first round, it did not. I tried to run away with my Dwarf in the second round with everybody else stunned, paralyzed, just waiting to act. Didn't work, but with Zonk waking up, I was able to cast Holy and get out of it. So here is the group of werewolves, and these guys are nasty in the vanilla version, and they're even nastier here because their status attack is not just poison as it is in the NES version, but poison and sleep. Poison and sleep. Now, I'm trying to, and you can see poison and sleep can't both show up in the status line of that one. So you see T-Hawk there is listed as being just poisoned, but the turn was skipped, so T-Hawk was asleep also there. But I'm trying to think if in the NES version, if there are any status attacks or even spells or abilities that apply more than one status. And off the top of my head, I cannot think of any. Here's another bat that's going to just hold me back, doing what bats do in this game. That is their job. That's just how they function. A cure potion, so that's worth 250 gold, I think, in this one. Steel hammer is definitely an upgrade from the iron hammer. Let's see what the stats are. 21 and 42 for attack and attack percentage. 26 and 46, so 5 extra damage and 4 extra hit percentage is not enough to give me another hit, but it will help land those hits, and it will give me 5 extra damage per hit that I do land. And another nice chunk of gold at the top. And then now I can finally upgrade my cleric down there in the third position to have the iron hammer. So instead of being 2 weapon steps behind what's available now, the cleric is only 1 weapon step behind what's available now. And my dwarf and my paladin and indeed my sage have the best weapon that they can have right now. The sage picked up an iron staff, or a steel staff, I think in one of the Mystic Key treasure rooms. So there's a battle with the cobras there. Use the ice spell to help me take those guys out. And now we can work our way around to level 3. While we're going back up through this kind of door maze, let me tell you about level 3 in the NES version and how I think it may be different in this version. In the NES version, in level 3, there is a sprite-initiated encounter with a vampire boss, who is talking about working with the Lich and helping the earth rot away into the marsh around the Earth Cave. You have to fight the vampire, and behind the vampire there's a chest with a ruby, and then there's also a staircase that is covered by a stone plate, or stone slab. And you can't advance any farther after beating the vampire, so you can pick up the ruby, which is a key item, and then you can check out the slab, but you can't actually advance. And then you have to backtrack your way out through 3 floors of the Earth Cave, because at that time, the Black Mage cannot learn the Warp Spell yet. I think the Warp Spell is a level 5 Black spell, but I think it's a wizard-only spell. So you can't warp out. You have to walk back out the Earth Cave. Now, if you know the way through, it's not as long. It's not very long. If you know the route, you can get through there pretty quickly. But you have to backtrack, and then you use that key item to get through another cave called Titan's Tunnel. You have to give the ruby to the Titan, who is blocking your path through Titan's Tunnel. You come out the other side, and then you can go talk to Sarda the Sage. And Sarda gives you a rod that can shatter the stone plate that's blocking the staircase in the Earth Cave. So you go down 3 floors of the Earth Cave, fight the vampire, get the ruby, backtrack 3 floors out of the Earth Cave, go west, go through Titan's Tunnel, talk to Sarda, get the rod, go back through Titan's Tunnel, back down to 3 floors of the Earth Cave, then you can smash the plate, and then you can tackle 4 and 5 of the Earth Cave. So the sequence in this game, kind of like the Mystic Key sequence that requires a lot of backtracking to places you've been, it was in the 80s a really efficient way, space-efficient way to kind of flesh out your game, to force players to, walk halfway through a dungeon, fight a boss, backtrack through the dungeon, and then walk through the dungeon again with a new key item. It was actually pretty clever. It would be seen as a pretty lazy bit of game design by today's standards. Here's some werewolves striking first, so they can be pretty irritating. There we go. Sleep and poison in the first round, the surprise round. But in the 80s, I think we can give them a pass for that bit of game design, because as I'm sure all of the Final Fantasy I hackers are aware, ROM space is at a premium. And when you have that many enemies, that many pieces of equipment, that many dungeon floors, you want to expand it any way you can, and kind of artificially expanding and fleshing out the game by forcing players to backtrack is a nice, efficient way to do that saves on ROM space. So certainly I can't fault them that. The images do not have the ability to stun characters like the more humanoid type undead creatures do. They can inflict the darkness status, and they will do decent damage with their physical attacks, especially on the characters without the heavy armor farther down the rank. Another thing I noticed about this 3rd floor is rather than spiraling counterclockwise, this seems to be spiraling clockwise towards the center. So we kind of have a mirror image of the normal B3 level of the Earth Cave. I think that's the case from the vanilla version, that the spiral goes counterclockwise. But the layout is more or less the same, including having treasure rooms off to the side. There's a couple of pretty useless treasure rooms in the vanilla version that are a little bit of a walk away. I had forgotten that I had already picked up that treasure chest, so too bad. Took a few extra steps, and I'm not going to walk around this bat because I don't want to waste those steps. Here's a fight with 2 more green ogres, and I'll still be running away from these guys because I'm going to explore to see what B4 looks like. Aha, now here we have what looks like a warp tile taken from the Mirage Tower. But I see stairs going down also, so before testing out what that warp tile is, because I suspect that warp tile brings you out to the world map, which was a luxury that I think the vanilla version could have used on B3 of the Earth Cave. After you fight the vampire, rather than have to backtrack out, I'm just going to see. Yes, it does indeed look like it goes down into B4. You notice that it's darker down there than it is down here on B3, so we're deeper into the Earth. But because of the time of this video, I think we're going to go out, and if that warp tile leads where I think it leads, that is the world map, I think we'll call that part 1 of the Earth Cave finished. But we need to inspect everything, so we checked to make sure that those are indeed the stairs going down to B4. And now we'll confirm that that is indeed a warp tile going out to the world map. These knight-type enemies have the same sprite shape as the bad man and evil man enemies from the vanilla version. These guys just have really, really high absorb, as you would expect knight-type characters would. Now, I'm wondering if this warp tile is protected by a spike square, and indeed it looks like it is protected by an earth enemy. If there's one thing that Final Fantasy ZZ taught me, it's that nothing that makes the game easier should be free. It should come at a price. So I don't know if the author of this hack is taking a page out of that book, something that I think is a valid piece of ROM hack design. When you're going to put something player friendly there. Maybe don't make it free, or maybe don't make it always free. Unless the goal is to make the game a little bit more accessible to modern gamers, which I don't think all ROM hacks are. I don't think all ROM hacks are designed for that. I think ROM hacks can serve different purposes. But anyway, we can talk about that more in the next video, because that warp tile did indeed take us out to the world map and safety. So we're going to call that it for today. If you like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It helps other people find the video, and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see this and more series of different Final Fantasy and other RPG type games that I've played through on this channel. If you have any thoughts on this hack or the series of videos, please do leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.